great to be here. I sort of did some of my formative years as a psychotherapist here in Edinburgh. Sort of when I first qualified, I came up here and worked at the Royal Ed, doing forensic work and stuff like that, which was very interesting, working in challenging behaviour. I worked on the closure of Gogarburn as well, which is now the head of a bank. But in those days was a residential hospital for learning disabilities, sort of that sort of stuff, the transition work. My background is in community work. I started off at the age of 16 in community work. I just had this passion for getting down with people. My first job was in Birmingham in a community centre in Handsworth during the riots, the race riots of the 80s. Some of you don't look old enough to remember that, but some of you might do. So it was an interesting introduction to the idea of sort of communities and people and getting along and not getting along. We've come a long way, I think, since those days, but there are still some of the issues there. Today, I'm going to talk about working with 12-step mostly. It says mutual aid, but really it's about 12-step. I think we've had other forms of mutual aid. There's lots of mutual aid around. I'm only going to talk about 12-step because I know about it, because I'm working with it. It's not because I think it's the best. It's just what's easy for me to work with, and that's what I work with most. That's it. But my fundamental policy line is this: whatever works, work it. And just go for it, you know, because in the end it's about getting happy. It's about getting better than well, and that's what's on offer, is an amazing life to people who can put this stuff down and move on with it. This is Keith Humphries. You've been introduced to him. Wrote a book called Circles of Recovery. You can get it on Kindle. I've got it on mine. It's a very good book. It's well worth reading. There's a lot of resources I use, electronic resources. We're going to put this on the website afterwards, some screenshots and things like that. So I was asked to make this practical. So this is practical. This is an amazing book. Get it. Buy it on Kindle now. It's really worth sort of every second you spend reading about it. All sorts of things I didn't know. I had no idea about this guy introduced me to. Women in recovery, I sort of knew about that, but the history of that, sort of some of the challenges around recovery movements and the plethora of recovery movements that exist. But this is the bottom line, financial bottom line. Working with mutual aid, and this is about 12-step mutual aid, will produce costs 45% lower. This is from Mark Gilman, who is the strategic lead at the National Treatment Agency down south for recovery. This is policy because of that. Okay, that's what he wants, and that's what he's going for. Is currently we have this position where recovery communities, treatment communities, there's a gap. In the States, that isn't true because of the work of people like Keith Humphries. In the States, what you've got is more like this, and that's what they're working towards now, is bringing the recovery and treatment communities together. And for Mark, that means a 45% extra capacity. That's the financial bottom line. In these times, that's what he's going to go and get. Yeah? Because he can't afford it, is basically what he's saying. So, who recovers? So this is now a public health argument. So I'm going to shift the frame into public health, into this better than well notion. Public health is what's happening down south. I don't know what's happening here, but there's a £1 billion budget for public health that is starting as of 2 weeks from now. Public Health England will be set up. The National Treatment Agency is being moved into that. And they've got £1 billion to spend on public health, which is prevention of illness, which is better than well stuff. And that's what they've got. So, in terms of recovery, everybody can recover, not everybody will, and we don't know who will, so the bottom line is we need to give everybody every chance that we can, not be exclusive, okay? Because there's lots of things that can work, but they don't all work for all people all the time. It's that whole thing of not one size fits all. So give everybody every size and push them into it. So what does that mean in practice? It means this. Currently, in treatment centres, you get that sort of psychotherapeutic biomedical model, the looking at the withdrawal through the use of medication if it's alcohol dependency, so you give them Valium so you don't die, etc., or if you Benzie, it takes years to get off Benzies, it's hard work. And then you've got the psychotherapeutic, which is the stuff that you've already been talking about today, the sort of dealing with the frozen emotional life, dealing with the trauma, etc. What has been missing so far in a lot of places has been then developing the shift in social networks, which is this better than well concept. And now that means we're moving into the area of 12-step facilitation. This is a picture from AA. That's a standard classic picture from AA, the two founders talking to a recovering alcoholic in a bed. And here's the basic message. There is a solution, and we know how it works. That's a quote from the AA Big Book. How it works is chapter 5, where they develop the 12 steps. The basic concept of 12-step is you alone can't do it. You alone can do it, as in you alone can make the decision, but you cannot do it alone. It has to be through fellowship. We can do it together. So they're taking this idea of 12-step facilitation. It comes from this notion in 12-step ideas of the 12th step, 12th stepping. The recovering alcoholic, the recovering drug dependent, whatever you want to say, going and speaking to somebody else who hasn't started that process and saying, this is my story, I've done it, join us, we can help you, peer to peer. So that's where this is coming from. So they're using now 12-step facilitation with, or they're pushing this 12-step facilitation, which is a professional role, but they're taking people in early recovery as peer mentors, it's often called, and getting them embedded into 12-step programs. So to motivate, the idea of 12-step facilitation is the peer mentors will motivate and support abstinence, get people involved in 12-step programs in their local area. They will know about them themselves, but crucially give them 12-step fellowship exposure during treatment, not after. So it'll be while people are in the rehab and the treatment centre, so that these peer mentors will guide people from there during the treatment process into their local sort of groups and learn the lingo, as it were. And then there are certain measures which I won't bore you with. I'm going to go through. You've got the slides. You can read them later. These are some sort of behavioural measures to see whether somebody is actually engaged in. There's a saying in 12-step groups, the 4 S's, if I can remember them: sponsor, share, service, steps, which is roughly this. So get a sponsor, share, talk in meetings, get a service position, do the tea, put the jazz out, whatever it is, and start working the steps. And it roughly is that. The only thing I would say is this: that doesn't mean that I don't read that as meaning that people have to be involved in large group activities together. It's just developing a friendship network. The next slide will explain it more. There's a saying in 12-step groups called "going with the winners," and that's what this looks like. Work. Are we up? There we go. So we are social animals. What's around us, our social reality, is often what we are. Okay, there's nothing complicated with that. Go with the winners. So the idea is that this 12-step facilitation will help people get this idea that you put positive pro-recovery people around you and you're more likely to succeed in recovery, and get rid of the negative anti-recovery people. So your social networks will change. Okay, so that's your social capital, which is Keith's best idea. AA has a way of saying it. I'm going to talk about this. I'm rushing through this, but in AA, in the Big Book, we are people that would not normally mix, which is social capital. But the crucial thing, and this is where the research by Keith Best says, is the bridging social capital is what produces this better than well shift. It's not just your immediate social circle. It's not just choosing people like you. It's got to be people from a range of cultural and social backgrounds. It's got to be people from a diverse range of backgrounds to produce this shift, this better than well shift. AA says we are not normally people we are people who would not normally mix, meaning we're there to get recovery from alcoholism. We have a primary purpose. That primary purpose brings people together, a diverse group of people together, and that diverse group of people produce this healing shift.